Right, now this is a scene that everybody thinks of and associates with the South Seas and hot sunny days and deserted beaches, and it's the wave that's crashing onto the beach with lots of foam and surf, and the eye of the wave with the sun shining through it, and then we have the surf itself running up the beach onto golden sands. Well, what I've done here already is to prepare a sky, and that, as you can see, is angled slightly from top left towards the bottom right, but it's no more than, let's have a look at some of the colours that we're going to be using. It's no more than a little bit of permanent rose, there's some phthalo blue with white at the top, and some ultramarine blue mixed with the permanent rose a little further down to give us this nice purple effect. And I've also put in, although it's not on this palette, I've put in a little bit of yellow ochre mixed with white to give us these lighter areas below the horizon. So let's get on with the first part, which is painting the background sea area. And I'm going to start off by using the phthalo blue and some of the white. So I'm starting in the background. If you want to and you're not quite sure of yourself, then put a piece of masking tape above the horizon and paint up to it, and that's fine. And that gives us the hint of the breakers in the background. If you want to create some hint of more breakers, just push the brush, the flat brush, into the paint like that, so it rides up on the ends of the bristles, and then just by stabbing on, there we go, you can see you start to create those extra breakers coming in. I'm going to leave it like that for now, and I'm now going to concentrate on this wave here. And the first thing I'm going to do is the whole focal point of the wave, which is the eye of the wave here. Right, now you can see I'm mixing up plenty of white, little tiny touch of phthalo blue, and I'm adding a little tiny touch of cadmium yellow. Don't want too much, you can see how little I'm putting on at this stage. And all that we're going to do is that. This is the eye of the wave here. Okay, we've got the eye of the wave painted now with that pale green. You don't need it, as I say, too much of a circle, and you certainly don't want it as a hard edge circle, because immediately now I'm going to go into the mixtures of the phthalo blue and the ultramarine blue. I'm going to bring that down here, maybe a little bit phthalo blue there, certainly bring in some white, so that we're gradually fading that pale green into the blue, or the blue into the pale green. In fact, I think what I'll do now is to swap brushes, and we'll take up the number 5 filbert. And you see the way I'm just doing this constant little sort of C shape all the time, and that gives us some lovely variations. Now in this case the wave has already turned over on itself. It's if you imagine, it's come in like that. So instead of turning the brush and doing C shapes this way as it's curling upwards ready to crash over, this way we're doing the C shapes, the letter C that is, back to front. Okay, that's fine. Now the next awkward thing you've got to know how to do is to change from this phthalo and ultramarine blue colour in the wave as it curls over to the wave that, if we can have a look at the picture, starts here getting lighter, and as it sort of starts running up the beach. It's a simple transition, and the way you do that is by starting off by bringing the wave colour along like that. But now what we're going to use is some cadmium yellow and some raw umber, maybe a little of the permanent rose, but lots of white. Now, having brought the beach down to meet the water just about here, let's bring the beach back up, because the water is going to be running over this top part of the beach. So what we're going to do now is to bring these waves in over that slightly damp paint, and it's the same basic colour that I've got here, and I'm just taking the line of the waves, even though it's quite the wrong colour at the moment, I'm just taking that up there. Now of course we can get back into these lovely sea colours and start bringing them back down onto the beach. Okay, lots of glazing material. Right, you can see we've progressed quite a bit now, and we've brought in some pale blue paint or water, seawater, up the beach. I'm just going to blend out that side of that'll all be hidden in due course by the foam and all the rest of it, but that's nicely blended that side, and then we just want it nicely blended this side as well. Okay, the next thing I think I'm going to do is to just put in the dark rocks with a little bit of raw umber and phthalo blue. Right, we've put on, with the palette knife, I've had a little bit of fun, indulged myself putting on some thick brown paint and bits of white, and you can see the white and the blue that's in there picking up this sort of colour. Here it's the same sort of colours with a little bit of cad yellow added. I've left that dark deliberately because we're going to put crashing waves over that in just a second. So the next thing we're going to do is to start with the foam effects over the top of the waves. And what I'm going to use for this is my little brush, fan brush, and I'll also use the scrappy little cheap bristle brush. Now the first thing I'm going to do is to mix up a nice mix of the ultramarine blue, and that will give us quite a shadow foam effect. Now that looks quite a mid blue, but as we've seen several times already on this course, colours that appear dark or light on the palette totally change character when you get them on the canvas. So I'm going to use this as a little palette at the moment because I want to take some of that paint off, but I'll come back to that if I need it again. We'll take that up to there for a moment. We'll just come back to the eye of the wave in a second, because what I want to do now is to use the scrappy little fan brush to bring down some of the foam in those areas like that in a random sort of way, as if it's just starting to break over the top of itself. But you can get the idea. Now I'm just going to work into this area here as I start putting some increasingly lighter foam. It's still quite a medium sort of blue, as you can see. Right, you can see that I'm putting in a lighter shade of blue. So I'm just imagining that the foam at every point is just breaking over in all sorts of different areas like that. Okay, still with the pale blue, I'm moving on with the rigger now, and I'm now just going to drag horizontally around the front edges of these, well, it's not waves, it's the water that's lapping up the beach, isn't it? And you see the way these things tend to overlap each other and come across like that. So to develop that a little bit further, what we're now doing is just drying the brush off like that, and then just dragging back slightly. Now I think what we'll do is to drag down some wet sand here. We'll do the same just here so you can see how it's done. I'm not worried about that raggedy edge at the bottom of the rock because we'll lose that in a second. Okay, I've got a sand colour here, and you can see I put some streaks in just to tone some of that dark colour down, and we can go back in. If we don't quite like the effect, we can go back in with a little bit of dark again. Right, I'm now going to just paint these rocks, or paint the water crashing over the top of these rocks, and what I've got is quite a medium blue, as you can see, and that stands out really well against these rocks. And what we'll do is to start to now go back into this with some virtually white paint, and you can see again the benefit of having the subtle tones of pale blue and mid blue foam colour. Right, virtually nearly there now. Just having another play with some of the light paint near the front edge of the water. Right, you can see now I'm just picking up with plenty of water and a pale blue paint using the rigger. And what we're going to create now are some of these foam patterns in the water that almost look like lightning strikes, but they so much help to give the shape and the direction of the water and the way that it's going up and round and curling over. Just make sure that as you put them in, they're following the line of the wave, or the curve of the wave, if you like. Okay, I've put in the foam lines and I've dragged in some extra highlights here. I've also just dragged in a few little highlights and flicks of foam. You can see those little sparklies work very well with the rigger, just bouncing across the canvas like that, and it just helps to add an impression that right next to these rocks there's an awful lot of wet sand, if not exactly water. You can see here. And the one thing I've left, which I haven't done yet, which I'm just going to sign off with, is really just a few little bits of water that are running down the rocks. You saw me do this already in the rapids tutorial, and it's exactly the same technique where the waves are crashing in and water's running down like that. Okay, I'm starting to fiddle now by putting little bits and pieces of water running down rocks here, there and everywhere, and that's always a sign when you start to fiddle. That's a sign that it's time to stop. So I'm going to put the paintbrush down. But I hope that's shown you that creating these great big waves that crash onto the beach and explode over rocks, and where you've got foam patterns and all sorts of things happening, isn't difficult if you take it step by step. So there we are. There's crashing waves on the beach, wet sand, exploding foam. It's a good way to finish now and say that that's done. Okay, I hope that's given you a lot of ideas about painting water and shown you how easy it is, regardless of whether it's flat, calm, rippled or a raging torrent. Main thing to remember about painting water is that it reflects the colour of the sky or things immediately around it, and particularly that it also makes dark items appear lighter in the reflection and light items appear darker. Okay, we're going to move on now to DVD 6, which is all about buildings and structures, and this is where we link the man-made objects in the landscape with the natural environment. Now everything's going to be in there. There are going to be houses, bridges, walls and all sorts of other structures. So as soon as you press play on DVD 6, I'll be there alongside you and I'll show you just how easy it is to produce all these buildings with a few simple lessons.